I think that's the hardest part of this process is it's time consuming, it's expensive, it's a lot of energy, and there is a very long post-op process, and it's incredibly emotional. Incredibly. I wanted to make sure that this decision was something that I really, really wanted, and it wasn't just me being insecure and in my 20s. And it never was about that. It was just, this is what I want. I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions and I can pay for it.
Yeah. So we have an interesting topic today, Carla, that I know you have a personal experience with and that I'm very curious about personally. And that is, we're talking about fat transfer for breast augmentation, especially as an alternative to traditional silicone implants. And I know personally in my practice, working majority with women, that I have encountered breast implant illness where people have had very serious systemic issues that it's caused autoimmune diseases, fungal issues, even leakage. And these women have become incredibly sick and had to have their implants removed. And then the road to recovery, it's possible to reverse these issues in most cases, but it was a really rough journey. So I'm always interested in hearing about alternatives that might be healthier for women who are interested in kind of aesthetic improvements. So why don't you start off by telling us just a little bit about your history with this?
Yeah. So, gosh, first of all, I didn't know that you've actually worked with women that had breast implant illness. So that's new to me. It's a concept I think that not a lot of women are aware of, at least throughout the conversations I've had with both patients and even friends of mine. They don't understand the full risks when a popular procedure like this is kind of everywhere, right? And it's very common, very common. Oh, I feel like probably half the women I know have breast implants of
Oh,
some sort.
wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's incredibly common. And in not just the US, I mean, throughout the world. And I think the US is one of the only ones where we hear a lot about this breast implant illness. I think Europe is also the ones doing the majority of the research. But it kind of all started for me because for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted boobs. I mean, if we're being real. And I was not genetically gifted. And I think a lot of my choices I made in my teenage years probably led to also some developmental issues. You know, when I was in high school, I was a competitive runner. I restricted my eating a lot. I dropped down to my lowest weight. I mean, it was a little bit under 100 pounds when I was running. So I was just not at like the healthiest when I was supposed to be developing. I think
Mm.
that might have had a big impact on size. And I just never grew into it. And I had like double A's. Like I had nothing. Let's be honest. And
Yeah, I
it
feel you.
yeah, right? Like it's a thing and it did affect me and into my adult years and my 20s, you know, I'd always thought about getting implants and just getting it done. But the more I got into health and wellness and integrative health, you know, it was just seemed so contradictory because I kept hearing about all these side effects and how dangerous they could be. And I personally felt really like conflicted whether this is something I should do or not. And then one day I just happened to come across, I think, someone we both know, Mary, their Instagram page. And she was talking about how she had done fat transfer because she had children and her breasts were naturally sagging and she wanted to bring back her size. And I stalked her for a good 3, 4 months. I think I even actually reached out to her to ask a lot of questions and who she saw and how, you know, just the procedure and what to expect. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized like this could be a safe alternative option for me. There was a lot I didn't know going into the surgery, as much research as I did. And I think that's why I wanted to talk about that today because I wish I would have known some of the things that I do now that
Mm.
I didn't before. So essentially, when I made the decision to do it, it was I think I was gosh, how old I was I? This was only 3 years ago. I'll be honest, I did 2 surgeries.
Oh, that's
Um,
right. I remember you talking about going through the prep.
yeah. So, let's first talk about, like, fat transfer in itself and what it is. You are transferring fat cells from other parts of your body to your breasts. So, how is that done? Through lipo. So, liposuction is the technique they use to retrieve the fat cells. And in my case, for the doctor that I worked with, he likes to use sites that fat cells tend to stick to and adhere to better than most. And that would be like the thigh, inner and outer thigh area, as well as the sides, like kind of your love handle area, so the sides of your obliques, and those are like his ideal places that he likes to source from. So the first surgery, that's what I did. I did inner outer thighs, and I did the kind of oblique area. And it went well. So the first surgery in terms of, I would say, how the liposuction did, I was very surprised and relieved that I didn't have a lot of issues with that. So
Mm.
that's yeah, that's the liposuction part and,
Well, then you get
um
like a double bonus in that you get fat sucked out of your thighs and then put into your boobs. I mean, that's pretty much ideal in my opinion.
it's the dream. I mean, I yes, to an extent. I'd be lying if I didn't say, "Oh, this is great." Like, and my thigh area is always the area that I used to hold on to weight, so it was kind of nice for me. I feel like it kind of balanced out the rest of my body. Yeah, so, the thing is that the biggest thing I didn't know going into all of this is that unlike breast implants where you know your size, you know what you're gonna get, you know the outcome, and you know that that's gonna be true for you. Fat transfer does not work like that.
Mm,
You are taking a gamble on whether those fat cells are going to live or not.
interesting.
And a lot of women have different experiences. There are women that I know that went to the same surgeon who had the same body type as me, who had also a double A and went to a double D, their first round of surgery. And there's a lot of factors that are involved into why that may happen. I think one of the biggest ones that my surgeon told me for me was my breast tissue density.
Mm,
And that can be a hindrance in terms of the fat cell survival and how much you actually retain. So I did not have great retention on either surgeries. The first one, I personally believe I probably lost about 60% of my volume. That is why I ended up doing it again because I was hoping, for whatever reason, that the second time would be more successful.
mm, mm,
Um, so that is really important to know. Like, do your research on what affects fat cell survival. And I would say do whatever you need to prepare to make sure that your body is at optimal health, optimal weight, and also that look at your breast tissue density because it matters. It absolutely matters. And that was another mistake I made was I at the time was a little heavier than my natural weight. So I unfortunately went into the surgery at not my ideal weight. And when I got out of the surgery over the course of a year, I lost weight naturally. And it's fat transfer. When you lose
mm.
weight, guess what happens? You lose fat.
Right. Yeah.
And you lose volume from your breasts.
Yeah.
And for me, that's exactly what happened. So I pretty much had like lost almost everything I had retained.
Mm.
And that's why I decided to do the second surgery.
So yeah, I guess it's a trade-off then. Whereas with silicone breast implants, there are so many more risks. And we talked a little bit in the beginning about breast implant illness and the serious implications that can happen with silicone implants. But I feel like those, at least you get kind of a consistent outcome. And it sounds like from what you're saying here, there are several different factors that may affect your end result. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different factors. And I would just encourage not to just do your own research, but talk to people who've gone through the process and get their experience as well, because it's not going to be the same as yours. But it's good to talk to several people to understand like all the different outcomes that can happen.
Mm.
And just know that it may not be what what you were hoping for. And I think that's the hardest part of this process is it's time consuming, it's expensive, it's a lot of energy, and there is a very long post-op process, and it's incredibly emotional. Incredibly. Like, I was very depressed after, surgery just given that I couldn't work out
Oh,
to
wow.
re yeah, to retain those fat cells. Um, so yeah, there's just a lot to consider.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually, emotionally, what really drove you to want to do this procedure aside from just, simply improving aesthetics? Like, I know for me as a small boob person, clothes fit better if your boobs are like, I'm a tall, not very small person, but I have very small boobs for my frame, and it like affects how dresses and things fit me. But like emotionally, what was your main driver, your main kind of impetus to want to get this done?
Confidence, 100%.
Yeah.
I did not feel like a woman, and I felt like I was stuck in my teen body, and most of my friends, weirdly enough, have a very nice boobs, and they're a good size. They're not like, some of them have Ds, some of them have Cs, but even Bs. Like, the thing is summer was always my worst time for me. Being in a bathing suit,
Mm-hmm.
not looking like a woman, and
Right.
I say that in quotation marks because I know that that's not the case. But for me personally, it was a very personal decision, and that had been my thing my entire life. And I was just tired of feeling that way when I could actually do something about it. So that was my motive.
Yeah, good. Well, and so switching gears back to what you were saying earlier. So, what can we do, women, to kind of ensure more success that you're going to get your desired outcome here?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, make sure you're going in at a healthy, consistent weight. So your normal weight should be what you go into surgery as.
Mm.
And you
That
don't
sounds like
want
a
to,
pretty serious factor to consider, huh?
yeah, it is. Like I said, I went in a little heavier, and that was the worst because my body naturally went back to kind of its set point weight, which was lower, and then I risked having, fat loss. But then it could also be the opposite. If you go in too low and then potentially, gain more weight, you could potentially start to yo-yo. So it's a big risk if you're not going in at that desired weight.
Mm. And then tell us again why you were having some emotional challenges or depression after the surgery.
So the post-op directions that I was given by the doctor that I went to and the clinic I went to, which I will say were lovely. They were so thorough. And from other doctors I had talked to previously, they were definitely the most concerned with how post-op treated you. And they were very strict, but for a reason. They wanted you to retain those fat cells. One of the biggest, I would say, downsides to this after having the surgery is for 3 months, you have to avoid physical exercise.
Oh yeah, I know that's a
Um,
big one for you. We're both super active, and if I couldn't work out, like that's my own vehicle for sanity. If I can't move or do regular movement, I go insane.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what happened essentially. I was not in a good place. I didn't realize how much it was going to affect me because I've never done that before. I've never taken 3 months off of, any kind of exercise or movement. And granted, I could walk. I could go on the elliptical for just slightly. Like, they don't want you to raise your heart rate to where you're starting to not be able to breathe normally, because then that is when you start getting into the fat burning
Fat
stage, right?
burning, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that was really difficult.
Yeah, I bet. So then tell us a little bit too. I don't know much about, obviously, I know more about traditional breast implant risks, but are there kind of what are the benefits here and the risks?
I mean, the benefit is you get your desired outcome.
But is it like, I guess what I mean is like aesthetically, do you get like a better shaped boob? Like, do they look more natural? Like
Oh, yeah.
silicone boobs are pretty noticeable, I feel like. So with this procedure, does it look more natural since it's your own fat?
You will never be able to tell someone who's gotten fat transfer to their boobs.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
They look exactly the same because it's just your breast tissue that's being filled out, right? Or your cup that's being filled. They look exactly the same, they sag the same, they
And they
droop the
feel the
same,
same.
they
They
feel
feel
exactly
like
the
squishy
same.
boobies. Yeah.
Yeah, they're real. They're so much better. I mean, in my opinion, because that's what I wanted. Not all women want that. Some women love the silicone look, and that's fine. But for me, I really wanted that very natural, like teardrop
Yeah.
look.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the biggest benefit is like no one will ever know that you had this done. Now, sure, you got also the scars to prove it, which there you have multiple scars because of the liposuction and the multiple incision sites that they're getting that from. So, again, that is something that you have to treat post op. But yeah, I would say those are the biggest benefits to that. There's a lot of risks, like with any surgery, right? It is a surgery. You're getting put under anesthesia and you have all those normal risks and complications that can happen. Personally, for me, I think the biggest negative that came out of it with my first surgery is that I started to develop like little round hardened balls I could feel around my breast. And at first I was kind of freaking out because
I
I
was
was
going
like,
to ask you about that. Like, is there any dimpling or weird things that the tissue does after you put it in there? So,
yeah.
yeah. So you got kind of like, that sounds like adenoma or some of those like more solid breast tissue issues.
The way my surgeon described it to me, and it's not uncommon, is that it's the fat cells that transferred, like, kind of, like, lumped together and they harden to
Mm,
create, like, a larger ball instead of, like, dispersing like they should.
hmm.
And there was really no way to get it out, like, once I could start to feel them. And so with the second surgery, he took care of it because he went in and he blasted them so that they could disperse. And so, like, now I can't feel it as much, not nearly as much. But I do remember after my first surgery, I went in to have an ultrasound, or not ultrasound, a mammogram done because I was so concerned. I was like, fuck, like, is this gonna like put me at risk for breast cancer?
Yeah.
Um, and I remember the technician was like, "Damn, you have a lot of lumps."
Oh, wow.
All of them were benign. She goes, they're just fat cells that are, like, clumped together." She's like, "But you have a lot of them. You should really, like, keep up on this." And, I just told my surgeon about it, and he's like, "Don't worry, we'll take care of him the second round." And he did, and it hasn't been an issue since, so that was the only kind of negative that happened for me.
Well, I can't imagine also that even if you do feel these lumps, and it is totally normal to have lumpy boobs, right? But I can't imagine that that would put you at more risk for breast cancer, or does it? I mean, breast cancer obviously is a hormonal dependent cancer, and these are cell division mistakes essentially. So, is there any kind of increased risk of breast cancer with these procedures?
I personally have not seen research that's been tied to fat transfer and correlating with breast cancer. I think in my head, when I found those lumps, that's just what we're trained to think as women, like,
Yeah,
"Shit, I have a
totally.
lump."
Yeah.
But no, I think you're right. Like, I don't think there's any, association with it. If there is, there's research I haven't come across. So, I mean, that's kind of another benefit versus obviously implants. That's a huge question mark, I think.
Yeah.
And I think the other kind of negative that potentially breast implants can cause is autoimmune disease,
Yeah.
where fat transfer
Yeah.
doesn't have that risk. It's your own fat, you know?
Right.
So it's very limited in like the real big concerns. Obviously, it is plastic surgery, not plastic surgery. They're not putting plastic in you, but it is cosmetic surgery. So you could potentially have the risk of deformity depending on the surgeon and how good he is, right? And especially with like liposuction and
No,
like you were
totally.
saying.
Yeah, that's always my concern. I mean, I'm getting old and I'd love to like spruce up my face some, but I'm so worried about any potential side effects. I'm too much of a wuss to do it. But I mean, I love the benefits of this. And with silicone breast implants, with my research, which is fairly limited, I haven't run across much increase in breast cancer specifically. But what I have seen mostly with breast implant illness is leakage that can cause fungal, like systemic fungal overgrowth or candida overgrowth, like mostly the fungal issues because these implants kind of just rot in there, it seems like. And your body, anytime you place a foreign object in your body, there is an autoimmune response. Your body is identifying that as a foreign object that shouldn't be there and launches this like immune attack, and that's the origins of autoimmune issues. So I've seen a lot of women who haven't, it took them years to connect their implant illness to getting implants, and then as soon as they got them removed, it was almost miraculous how quickly they returned to baseline. And there are definitely things you supplement wise and lifestyle wise that you can do to support this and kind of detox from the effects of silicone or any kind of leakage. But it's everything you're saying just sounds like such a positive
Yeah,
compared.
for sure. I think overall the experience was very positive. Did I get the outcome I wanted? No. And so
Well, your
that's
boobs look really good. I mean, they might not be what you wanted, but they still look good.
thank you. I'm at least a B cup, you know. They're not even close to like what I envisioned. I never wanted huge boobs. I just wanted something. So I did get that, which was nice. But I will say like in this process, I think I went to one of the best doctors that I could. And I learned so much through the forums and the Facebook group specifically for this doctor. There were so many women that came forward that were explants patients. And, they told their story about having implants and why they were taking them out. And they decided not to replace the implants because of so and so reasons and symptoms. And it was amazing. So many women, I'm sure you've heard this too, Mary, where they're like, I've taken out my implants and all my symptoms go away. My
Yeah,
health is restored.
like
And
quickly.
there, yeah, one of the most famous women I remember was Hugh Hefner's ex wife. She got her implants removed, and I think
Holly
she
Madison.
was, no, I don't think it was Holly Madison. It was another one of his exes. Um,
There are a lot of them.
I know.
Oh, is her
Uh,
name Crystal something? Maybe.
yes, I think
Yeah.
so. I think that sounds familiar. Yes.
Shocking how much I know about Hugh Hefner's ex-wives.
There's some great documentaries out there.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, she I remember came out and it really made me want to look into this more. And it made me more hesitant too when I probably thought about this for almost over a decade, like getting
Oh,
implants.
wow. Yeah.
It took me a long time. I was 36 when I did this first surgery. So I wasn't a young pup.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to make sure that this decision was something that I really, really wanted. And it wasn't just me being insecure and in my 20s. And it never was about that. It was just, this is what I want. I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions and I can pay for it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about surgery recovery and nutrient wise. Is there anything specifically that you did, supplements or anything that you think speeds healing or kind of helped you retain your results?
Yeah, like, again, I didn't have the best retention, but I think a lot of that is just how my body is built, and there's not a lot I can do about that. Um, but I do think the research supports following very specific, guidelines post-op, and that includes diet, as you mentioned, and I think one of the biggest rules that I probably it's not that I didn't follow it, it's just I wasn't used to eating that way, but you really do need to eat in a surplus. You're trying to feed these fat cells and make them stay and retain and give them as much oxygen as possible within those 3 months, really within the year. But those restrictions that we had on us were incredibly tough to follow for 3 months. I don't think
Mm,
I could have done it for a year.
mm, yeah.
So, eating in a caloric surplus, both for energy and for like oxygen consumption, are really important. And then obviously not, calorie counting, don't watch your macros, nothing like that. Like, you need to go into this being very having a very healthy relationship with food, let's say. This is not for
Hmm,
people who are, fearing food, trying to restrict food. You will get nothing out of this.
that's really interesting. That's good to know. So, were there any supplements specifically that you took that helped, do you think?
Yeah, so what I would say with supplements is they were very strict on what you were taking leading up to surgery, pretty much like any surgery, and also afterwards, because there's so many different ingredients that can affect fat retention. So with supplements, they were the ones that I kind of like leaned on to what I could and could not take. I didn't really take a lot of stuff on my own, which usually I do. And what some of the things I was actually really surprised with and also excited about, that my doctor embraced other types of supplements other than just medications. So he gave me like bromelain, which is an enzyme that helps balance like the inflammatory response, as
Oh,
well as
yeah.
arnica.
That comes from pineapples.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was kinda cool to see, and then, arnica was the other one, which, helps with, like, temporary relief of bruising, swelling, and pain. So he gave me both of those, and then I would say you definitely wanna make sure you're obviously getting enough nutrition, and a lot of, like, multivitamins out there can have ingredients that don't support this type of surgery. So, there are brands out there that he gave me that was like a clinical multivitamin and mineral support to help prepare you both for surgery and also after. So, you just really wanna watch the ingredients. You don't want to take anything that's going to boost your metabolism, that's going to, like, detox you. You're trying to literally just preserve everything that you have.
Speaking of, is another huge issue I see with women I work with. They simply just aren't eating enough and don't really realize it. And it's causing a lot of their symptoms, like fatigue is especially a main one. But that's a really good point because so many women unintentionally are eating at a calorie deficit.
Yeah, exactly. So, and not to say that I just go off by how my body feels. And honestly, I wasn't that much hungry after surgery. They told me that I was going to be a lot hungrier, and I really wasn't. And I remember my surgeon always describing it like liposuction is like an internal burn on your body.
Oh, yeah.
And working at a hospital, I remember when I worked with burn victims, like in the ICU, when we had to calculate their nutritional needs, oh my God, these people were eating like over 6,000 calories a day.
Wow.
Because,
Well, you need
yeah,
the raw materials to help your body heal.
exactly. So that's exactly what we're kind of going through with like liposuction and all of the damage and the healing that your body's going through. But you don't really like in your head can put two and two together. And so if I wasn't hungry, I wouldn't eat a lot because then I just feel sick. And I think that's one of the things I regret. Like I really wish I would have eaten more. I didn't gain any weight through that healing process, and I should have. I think the women who retain better gain about like 5 to 10 pounds, and I know it sounds like a lot, but if you really want the boobs, like, go all the way.
Yeah, and that could be really hard for some women, especially if they've had disordered eating backgrounds and having to really monitor or even calorie count or even eat more than they're used to. That can be very triggering.
100%. I completely agree, and, if I'm being completely honest with myself, I've had those issues in the past, and I think with just not moving and not exercising enough, some of those things came up for me at the time. I don't think I was very aware of it then, but looking back now, I do think that that was kind of going on, like, mentally for me.
Mm, sure. Well, before we wrap up, I'm just one more question. What is the best benefit to you from having this procedure besides the obvious? Obviously, you have boobs and you're happy with your shape and you mentioned confidence, but what would you say has been the best outcome here or the best benefit to you?
Honestly, I can't put a price tag on my confidence and how I feel about, me being in my body and just liking what I see. when I look in the
Mm,
mirror, right? I don't
yeah.
it's not about other people, and I know a lot of people are like, "Well, you shouldn't care what you look like if other people do," it doesn't matter. It's about how you feel. And, I think that is the biggest benefit. Like, I'm not gonna lie. The lipo was actually a bonus, because
Sure.
my second surgery, they took it from my lower stomach, and let me tell you, that shit does not go away
Oh,
unless
yeah.
you're doing lipo.
Totally. No, that's like the layer that protects your ovaries, and it's not
Yeah.
really meant to unless you get it sucked out.
Yep, and I did.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all the tips with us. It's all very fascinating. And honestly, I see so many benefits here. And I love what you say that about confidence. Like when I'm feeling good and doing everything right, which even us as health coaches, nutritionists, dietitians, we even get off track and have to start over again. And when everything is aligning and I'm feeling really good, you really are at your best. And so I completely agree with what you say about having a procedure like this done that can really just enhance that for you even more so than what you can do on your own.
Yeah, absolutely.